Hello, Yes But Why listeners. This is your host, Amy Jordan. Welcome to Yes But Why, episode 245, my interview with the delightful Annie O'Connor. But first, let's chat about our sponsors. Today's episode is sponsored by Audible. Get your free audiobook download and your 30-day free trial at audibletrial.com/yesbutwhy. Did you know Audible has kids' books? Yet another way Audible has helped me with motherhood. I play Chicka Chicka 1, 2, 3 for my kiddo in the car, and he is happy as a clam. Drive time handled. Audible is available on most of the devices you already own. Go now to audibletrial.com/yesbutwhy to download the app and sign up to get your free audiobook today. Another sponsor for today's episode is my company, podcastcadet.com. My husband, Chris Jordan, and I are ready and waiting to answer your podcasting questions. Contact us now at podcastcadet.com and use code YBY20 to get 20% off the first service or workshop you buy. Podcastcadet.com, helping creators navigate the waters of podcasting. This week on Yes But Why, we chat with veteran improviser Annie O'Connor. Annie has been teaching and performing improv at universities, theaters, and festivals around the country since 1997. In our conversation, Annie and I talk about crazy road trips, writing comedy songs, and really, truly loving improv. I now present to you Yes But Why, episode 245, Annie O'Connor and Finding Confidence in Your Own Abilities. Enjoy. I'm Amy Jordan, and this is Yes But Why podcast. Yeah.
I like to ask people about when they were a kid and they were performing, but when I mentioned it to you earlier about, when you were a little kid and you knew that you wanted to do more performing or thought you were good, you were like, no way. What's going on with that? What happened when you were a kid?
Oh, nothing happened when I was a kid. I just, the classic thing that happened to me, that happens to lots of people, like, I auditioned to be in some play when I was in like third grade. It was a Christmas play, but there was a duck in it, and I really wanted to be the duck, and I was I was like the gregarious, kind of outgoing kid in the class, so I assumed I would be the duck, and I wasn't the duck. Vanessa Hughes was the duck, and it like shattered all confidence that I had in any ability to perform. And this was pretty young, so I went through most of my childhood believing that, like, that just wasn't for me. That wasn't how people saw me, even though I was like, I was like a big goof. I was a clown, I was always trying to make people laugh. I came up with like a stand-up routine when I was like 6 years old, and it was like terribly raunchy, and just, I cannot even repeat some of the jokes that I made as a 6-year-old because they're that disgusting and like, they're just so not appropriate. And so like, I want to tell you what it was, like what the bit was, but like, I just can't, because it would be so offensive. It's so offensive. Thinking back on it, like, holy moly. So I just, I didn't think that I was a performer. So when I got to like high school, and there was like the drama club and all that stuff, like, I turned my nose, up at it. I was like, no, this is not for me. It was for Vanessa Hughes. She did a great job. She was.
Oh yeah.
She really sold it. And then I went to college, and by this point I was like obsessed with, like, I loved Whose Line Is It Anyway? And this is, in like the 90s, Whose Line Is It Anyway? So I used to watch it when it would come on maybe Comedy Central, but Comedy Central also was sometimes not Comedy Central. It was like another channel. So occasionally, I can't remember what channel it was on. Anyways, so yeah, I loved his lines anyway, so I like knew what improv was kind of. And then I went to college in the late 90s, and I saw an improv team at my school. And was told I went to Ball State in Indiana. Be impressed.
Wow.
That's an impressive school. It's a state school.
In Indiana. Wow. That's a good school.
It's very classy.
Well, I mean, it must be if it's already got some students doing improv at it.
It did. I mean, we were, that was like kind of still the dawning of improv, especially college improv. There was, not too many colleges doing improv, but my school was. And there had been a team that existed for like maybe 4 years, maybe 3 years since I'd been there. And their name was Absolunacy. It still is Absolunacy. They still exist. And so I was like, secret wish that I would have been on Absolunacy, that I would be on Absolunacy. That's freshman Annie watching Absolunacy, like, if I could do this, but then I, wouldn't allow myself, like I couldn't go audition, like I was too afraid of the rejection because of the duck situation in third grade. But I didn't know that. You can't articulate that sort of, like, you can't articulate that thought at 18. But looking back, I obviously now understand the path that that I had created this story for myself about performing. And so I eventually did audition for Absolunacy because a friend of mine, he really wanted to audition, and he was like, come with me, it'll be so great. And I was like, no, I couldn't. And then he talked me into it, and I was just going to go watch him. But then when I was there, they were like, no, just get up and play with us. So then I did, and then there was maybe like 200 people at that audition, and then me and this, and then I got onto the team. I was one of 2 people that got onto the team.
Whoa.
And then the guy who was my friend was so mad at me.
Oh, yeah.
He squirted saline solution in my eyes. And then he left Ball State.
Oh, my God.
I mean, I don't think it had anything to do with me. I think he had issues.
No, this was his duck situation.
No,
it
did not have to do with me.
Right now, telling this story, and he's like, I just wanted to be that duck. Like, oh my God.
I mean, it's not. He is an improviser, and he does perform, and I re-met him later in life, and he's totally fine. But, this was like the first 3 months of college, and I was a freshman, and I met him, and we were friends, and he made me go to this audition, and then he didn't get on the team, and he
never spoke to you again.
Not for years.
Oh,
basically, he was so mad. And this happened to me. I was in this was previously when I was in 7th grade. My best friend wanted to be on the cheerleading squad, and I could have given 2 S's about the cheerleading squad, but she was like, she really wanted to do it, and so I auditioned with her, and she didn't get onto the cheerleading squad, but I did, and she punched me in the face.
I'm sorry, I shouldn't laugh. It's not funny.
It's not funny. We were in school and she hit me. She was so mad. So that's 2 times I've gotten onto something at someone else's insistence, and then they, and her and I stopped being friends as well.
Oh my God. Guys, stop inviting your friends to auditions.
Just go by yourself. Don't even tell me about it, if you tell me about it, I will get on to the whatever, and you won't. So just don't go with me, because I'm going to shine.
I'm amazing. See, this is why I
Gosh,
don't
I'm
understand
so
how you
amazing.
didn't think you were amazing. You're like literally beating out everyone. No one.
I had no idea.
Like, I took your thing. I took your thing. You're a cheerleader? I mean, come on.
I am very loud, and I had some really strong, quads, so I think they only took me onto the team so that I could hold other girls. I was always on the bottom of the pyramid because I was heavier than the other kids.
Yep. I'm sure
But anyways,
that's what happened. Well, she punched you in the face for those quads.
She punched me in the face.
Might as well. Just
that's what happens. So,
oh, God.
But yeah, I didn't. I did not think that I even, I got onto Absolute Lunacy, and I was on Absolute Lunacy for all 4 years of being in college, and I was the president, and ran the troupe, and, we did improv, we did short form, and we did sketch, and we wrote songs, we recorded an album.
Oh, that's fun.
We recorded 2 albums. Our advisor knew these 2 guys in Indianapolis who did a talk show. It was called the Bill and Tom show. Oh, now I can't even remember. They were
could be Bill and Tom. It's like every hometown thing. Yeah, it's all random crap
they
like
were
that.
out of Indianapolis, and they were it was like they were similar kind of to the Jerky Boys, where do you remember the Jerky Boys?
Yeah.
They were they did bits and crank called people. Bob and Tom. That's what they were called, Bob and Tom.
Yeah.
Did I say that before?
I don't know.
Anyways, he was friends with them, so we got to go to their studio, and we wrote our music, and then we recorded it, and it was really a time. It was a time in life.
Were you on the radio? Were your funny songs on their radio show?
To be honest, I don't remember. I don't remember what happened. I remember that we recorded those albums. We made them. We sold them at our shows. And we very well could have been on their radio show, but I legitimately have no memory of that.
No, I understand. It's like when people ask me about television shows that came out while I was in college or just after. I was like, I wasn't watching TV, man.
Yeah, I didn't watch any TV in college. I have no idea.
I was doing college. And they're like,
I was doing college things.
I don't know.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, so what did you get a degree in? Because you clearly didn't go for theater.
No, I got a degree in psychology.
Oh, nice.
Uh-huh.
Nice.
And then after school, my friend and I took a summer-long road trip. While we were on that trip, I was supposed to go to grad school for psychology in the fall, and I when I was on the road trip, we were staying at this hostel in Truth or Consequences, New Mexico. If you've ever been.
No.
It's such a small little hot town, but they have a hostel in it, and then they have hot springs. And we just ended up staying. We didn't have a bunch of money at that point. We had already burned through a lot of money, and so we ended up getting a job at a pottery factory that we were working, and trying to save up some money to leave. Then we ended up working there for 3 weeks or maybe a month, I don't know. And while we were there to stay at the hostel, we worked out a deal with the guy who owned the hostel, because we didn't have money to pay him at the time, that we would help clean, and also we would host things in the evening for the guests. And so I was like, well, I'll host some, I can teach some improv games. So I started teaching the people who were coming through this hostel, improv games at night around a bonfire. And it was as stupid as it sounds, it was a really life-changing 3 weeks, because I realized I didn't want to go to school for psychology for real. I loved teaching improv so much. And, I was too young to realize that those two things absolutely complemented each other, the idea of psychology and the idea of teaching improvisation and performing improvisation. So I didn't go to grad school. I went to Cincinnati, lived in my friend's closet, and I had met this team at a festival, a college festival, and it was just a bunch of, like white guys, and as were a lot of improvisers in the 90s, and they were like, well, if you ever come to Cincinnati, we'd love you to join our team. I just kismet loved these guys. I thought they were so great. And so I ended up going to Cincinnati, and I was like, I'm going to join their professional long form team. And that's what I did. I went to Cincinnati, and I started performing with these guys. And, they weren't.
They just let you in? You'd been doing short form and stuff, and they were just like, yeah, no problem.
I mean, these guys had no training. They're just doing their, this is this is late 90s comedy.
Sure, but that's kismet,
There's no other improv in Cincinnati. They have there's a short form team called Wits End, and then there was a long form team called Trespassers Only, and they both were kind of Annie, join our team. Annie, join our team. And I ended up going with the long form team because I had done short form for so long, and I was like, well, I want to do that. But, it led to other things, but I'm just telling you my whole story now. My God.
No, man, I feel like, at the beginning we were talking about this lack of confidence. You have no need to have a lack of confidence. I hope you have confidence now in your life. Your whole story is about how people are begging you to be on teams with them, and then your friends are losing out. They're punching you. They're leaving town. They're burning down, like Wendy's. They're so mad. It sounds like you're great. It's just the trouble is the wake of terribleness behind you as you go, but everything seems to work out amazing for you. I love the idea that you moved to Cincinnati and the whole improv scene is she's mine, no, she's
but the whole improv scene is 10 people. There's no improv scene in 1999 or whatever in Cincinnati. We're doing shows in the back of a bar. It's not if I had been smart, I would have gone to Chicago and studied improvisation, but I didn't because I had no confidence to do that. I wasn't able to go the extra mile and and to go actually learn it. I instead went this offshoot way. And I hear what you're saying that I am rose, there are rose tinted kind of glasses here. And I think I was kind of a performer my whole life, but it took me even many more years after this to actually admit that I was a performer, which I think is a thing for most improvisers. And most improvisers that I met that there's just an imposter syndrome. We all think we don't belong, that we're not as good, that suddenly someone's going to realize we shouldn't be there. We're not actors. A lot of improvisers don't believe that they're an actor because that puts too much pressure on them. And so I had all those things going on with me. I shouldn't be here. I'm not actually funny, But in hindsight, it seemed like I was doing pretty well. Do you see how I almost cussed? But I didn't cuss. I caught it. Woo! I caught that cuss.
You're doing pretty good.
What the cuss? I did great. Pretty cussing good.
Pretty cussing good. Absolutely. Well, you're right. There's no way that you can know at the time that things were going great. There's hindsight is the best, and in fact, that's part of why I enjoy the podcast, really, because it's I like looking back on people's memories and hearing the way that they tell them because, it just frames things in a fun way, but it's all created by where you're at now, right? It's not, the way I'm telling a story about a certain part of my life will change in a few years if I change the way I look at it.
Absolutely.
everything goes up and down. Now, with reference to this Cincinnati move, you went to this crowd, though, because you felt comfortable, right? Like, you met these people, they were cool. Yeah, you could have gone to Chicago, but Chicago didn't have people that were like your friends. So it makes total sense that you would go to Cincinnati. How long were you there?
Well, I actually grew up right outside of Chicago, so it would have made sense for me to go to Chicago, and I knew lots of people who had moved there.
I'm really trying
I grew up in a small town called Lowell, which is like just south of Gary, Indiana. So, I mean, I didn't want to go to Chicago because it was near my family. That's the truth train. Mm-hmm. Like, I didn't want to be near my family.
Yeah.
So I went to Cincinnati. And, it's funny because this story, like, about performance and all that stuff is like, like when I look back on it, like, yeah, it seems all like it was heading in the right direction. But, like, I'm 20 or 21 years old and, like, I've got a twin size mattress in someone's closet that has been smashed in there, and it it doesn't really fit, so the sides of it it's kind of like a bow, you know what I mean, like the edges of the mattress, and I'm working at a waitressing job, and like I didn't go to grad school, and now what am I doing? So the time was really wrought with like fear that I had done something incredibly stupid because there was no like payment, there's no, I'm like just getting together with some pals and we're just putting stuff up on stage, but like there is no clarification that this was a good move in any capacity. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I can tell you there are 5 or 6 years that I have rose-colored and squished into one day in my brain for sure. Where I'm like, oh, I remember living in New York City. It was so magical. No, it wasn't. No, it absolutely was not. It was terrible in a lot of ways. You lived in 6 different apartments. There was a lot of failure. Like, come on.
What did you move to New York for?
Well, just theater. You know what I mean? Like, just doing it. I grew up in Boston, so, like, it was the big city to go to to be in theater and do that kind of thing. So I went and tried to do it, but, the city has a vibe, and sometimes it's hard, and it kicked me out 3 different times. And I would go back to my mom's house and get a job and make some money and then move back. But,
That's perseverance.
Sure. Well, I wanted to do it. And when I left, I felt like, I was like, okay, don't leave unless you feel complete about this place because you kept coming back. So if you're done and you don't need to move here again, you can leave. And I was like, yeah, I think I've done it. Because I lived in New York total, I want to say like 5 years, which isn't a long time.
What were the years you lived there?
Well, okay, again, on and off. So it was 2000 to 2000, the year, to 2007, I want to say. Now I know you're like, but Amy, that's 7 years. You're right. But there was the year of 2001, the fall of 2001, the fateful fall of 2001, and the spring of 2002. I was living in Portland, Maine, doing an internship at the time. But all the rest of the time, I lived in New York City. But so, like, I had a full sort of, like, school year spent doing this internship in Portland, Maine.
Yeah. Were you at a theater in Portland?
Yeah, Portland Stage Company. It's like the main theater.
Yeah,
I'm sure the people in Portland that are listening are like, excuse me, there's like a lot of theaters here. And they're right, but it's
now it's blowing up.
It's the Lort Theater. The one that can pay you
money.
The Lort
Theater?
Lort. League of Regional Theaters. LORT.
Oh, not the Lords like Jesus Christ.
No. No,
It's the Lord's Theater is what I thought you said.
Theater. Man, that would be great. Imagine if I was like, oh, well, this theater's better because it's the Lord's Theater. You'd be like,
I don't
wow.
have to imagine thinking that because I did think it just a second ago. And that's why I brought it up to you, because I was certain you said the Lord, like Jesus Christ Theater.
Nope. It is
And thought that's pretty brazen for a theater company to like co-opt the whole of Christianity.
Imagine if that was their like tagline.
This is the Lord's Theater.
Oh man, well,
We're doing it for Jesus, and He approves.
Be very
These
specific.
theater productions are great.
There's a lot of that, actually. I bet you we could Google that. That would be a real thing.
I'm sure there would be.
I
mean, everybody's got a thing. Just because you have faith doesn't mean you can't like a thing.
No, absolutely, for sure. And hey, man, if those are the stories you're super into, if you're like, listen, I don't need other stories. Have you read this Bible? It's chock full of them. Be like, hey,
There's
man, you're
so
right.
many stories in the Bible.
There's a lot.
Yeah, we're not judging.
Some people literally only work on Shakespeare their whole life. And let's be clear, like the canon of Shakespeare, smaller than the Bible. So,
Right.
Yeah, just saying. No, it is a LORT, League of Regional Theater. And there's only a few. There's I don't know how many there are in Maine, but it's a Maine one. Also, they're the ones that had money to pay interns. So yeah.
But you and I are maybe about the same age. Are we about the same age? Will you reveal
42.
your age to me?
I'm 42.
Me too.
Hey, yeah.
Hey,
twinsies. You moved to Cincinnati in 1999. I was like, yeah, because I graduated from college in 2000, and then
I graduated in 2000. I moved there in 2000. Did I move there in 2000 or maybe 2001?
Cincinnati,
something like that. I didn't live there in 1999. I met those guys in 1999.
Right, at the festival. Yeah. Well, it's funny. I didn't even go to any festivals. I didn't know what improv was until I was 30. So, I'm always fascinated to know the way people even heard about it. It's interesting to me that because I didn't really know about Whose Line Is It Anyway until later. Like when people would bring it up to me and I was like, what? Oh, yeah, let's watch it. But I was somehow aware of improv. I just didn't do it. And I was into like sketch comedy, like Kids in the Hall and that.
Oh, yeah. Loved Kids in the Hall.
SNL, a lot of that. I watched a lot of that.
The State.
Oh, The State. Oh, The State.
I love The State.
Them. I still love them. None of them are dead. They're great. The State is great.
You're like, I feel like you're, I'm because Ball State did have this improv team, that's the reason I even got to experience it. And it was like a huge deal on campus. Everybody knew about Absolunacy and we would have shows once a month and, there'd be 500 kids there watching these shows. We had them in the huge auditoriums at the school. So it's kind of a little bit of a rock star thing, which was awesome. But, the Whose Line Is It Anyway? I really loved, I loved Carol Burnett growing up, and I loved the Carol Burnett show. And I remember, maybe my mom also loved it, and so did my dad. And we were watching a scene with Tim Conway in it, and my dad or my mom, one of them said something like, "Oh, do you know this was just, that he just made this up, that they didn't have a script for this or whatever." And I remember being fascinated with the idea that they didn't have something they knew they were going to say, just that Tim Conway and who is the other guy? I can't remember his name.
I can't remember any of their names. No, I can see
Tim
their
Conway
faces.
The other guy. I see his face. He was Hedley Lamar. Hedley Lamar in Blazing Saddles, whatever his name was. Anyways, that they did a lot of scenes, that a lot of their stuff was improvised. I mean, I didn't know that word improv until I saw Whose Line Is It Anyway? And then it was just like the same connection. Like, I always loved that sort of thing much more. And I loved The State, and I loved Kids in the Hall, but I loved the idea of just like off the cuff, that you could just say stuff. And it was okay, because I mean, part of it though was like my deep fear of like theater because of this duck scenario that happened in third grade. As dumb as it sounds, like I was fearful that like I was only funny as a person, in that I was only like worthy of performance as a person, but not like you couldn't give me a script and I would read it and it would be funny. Like I was, in my mind, I couldn't do that. And that was like, I was terrible at that. And that was just like like a very deep truth that I believed about myself, which is something that I've realized that improvisers and people do, all people do. We create truths about ourselves based on small incidents that happen in our youth that if we look back on them, we can't put any weight on them because it's just so stupid. Like, it's so stupid that I wasn't the duck, or who cares that I wasn't the duck? And I'm sure my family was like, who cares? But to me, it was like, such a deep cut that it changed my whole perspective about what I could and couldn't do. And then that knot was like, took me years to untangle. You know what I mean? I'm sorry I came back around to that stuff we were talking about.
No, absolutely.
Youth and improv.
No, it's an important detail for sure. And I think you're right that most people feel that way, unsure of what their place is. And the idea of doing a play seems so solid and permanent and like, well, there's a right way and a wrong way to do that.
Right.
But when you do improv, it's like, it's so hippy dippy, like literally anything goes. And that's not like exactly true, but that's certainly how you get them in the door.
Right. Yes, that is how you get them in the door. And then you put rules on them.
No, I always say, like, I teach level 1 all the time, and I like saying, listen, I'm going to give you a bunch of rules, but then at the end, I'm going to let them go. These rules don't matter later, but you need to work. They
don't matter later. Like when I teach level 1, I say it is when you learn how to drive, we teach you all the rules on how to drive, but you know when you can follow these rules and when you don't have to. And if no one's watching, you can break any of them however you want. And improv's the same way, guys. Thanks. Have a good day.
Well, I usually
do that illegal U-turn.
I usually just say that when they, like have a real issue with a thing that you're making them do, or they're like, I don't understand. And you're like, it's an exercise. Just try it. Like, just do the exercise. You might not ever have to do this again if you just do it this one time.
You probably won't, or you will have to do it constantly.
That's how improv works.
If you don't like it, chances are you're going to be your Achilles heel and you're going to have to conquer it. So let's just go ahead and dip our feet into the pool, okay?
Mm. Yeah, you've taught improv. There's a journey that they go through.
There's a journey.
And you have to just let them be on their journey. And sometimes they're like, how dare you? This is terrible. And you're like, mm-hmm. And sometimes they're like, this is the best rule I've ever heard. And you're like, great. So
this is all great. And this is all just about you.
Mm-hmm. Sure. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
I love that kind of stuff, though. I've taught like week-long intensives, and I like being the person who's in charge of like checking in on the mental states of the people. I get 10 people who are all doing this week-long intensive, and we're like all doing improv for like 8 hours a day for 5 days. So like usually around like Wednesday, they crack, like, and something happens to them, and they either like can't, like they laugh too much and everything's insane, or they get like mad, and they get, combative, not like physically combative, but they'll be like, listen, I'm just not good at this. Okay. And you're like, okay, sure.
Yeah.
But I was
Yes,
always
I have also
cognizant
taught
of those things.
I feel like my best improv stories all happened around intensives.
Yeah.
Like trying to teach level 3 or whatever in 1 week, 6 hours a day for 5 days, that sort of thing. Yep. And then there's inevitably somebody midweek who just cracks in lots of delightful ways and a lot of hindsight delightful ways, but in the moment horrifying.
But that's why it's good. That's why I was always happy to be like, because there were a few of us in the room, right? There was like a main teacher, 2 like home teachers there were 2 of us who were with them the whole time. And then there were people that would come in and visit and teach for a couple hours here and there. But like most of my job was just being with them. Like I'd give them notes, but I only taught once, like for one like section. But the rest of the time I was just with them, and I'd be like, how you guys doing? Like, have you eaten? You should drink some water.
Oh, so I love that. I love that you're just on mental checks.
Yeah.
I was just alone in a room with, 15 other people for 6 hours a day. And I'm also breaking it.
We're allowed to have that many people in a room together. Give me a call.
I can't
I'll just
wait.
be the mom. I'll just come. You'll do all the whatever teaching you want to do, and then the whole time I'll be like, sweetie, let me just give you a little shoulder rub. Hey, have an emergency. You look pale.
This sounds like a dream.
Bathroom recently? Who needs PB&Js? I've got a whole case of them right here.
Well, that sounds so great. I can't believe I'm fantasizing about it. Like, oh, what a dream.
I know. Yes.
What a dream.
It's true. So let's jump forward. After Cincinnati and the great success of Cincinnati Improv,
was a great success.
After that?
I have to say that I left, and the 2 of the guys that were there with me at that time, they stayed. One of them went and trained in Detroit at Second City there, and then came back, and now they're doing it. Now they have a theater company and Over the Rhine, because that's a place in Cincinnati. So Over the Rhine Improv, or OTR Improv. I've had a glass of wine. I just want you to know that.
She says an hour into the conversation.
This might be my second or third. I'm not sure yet. But, fast forwarding, I go to Cincinnati, and I end up leaving there, and I moved to L.A., and because my significant other at the time he had a job with not Bob and Tom, I can't remember. He had a job with Troy Miller, and he worked for Tenacious D and Mr. Show, and so we went to LA, and I was totally intimidated, and I didn't want to do anything, and I was totally scared to do improv there because I knew acting was what the city was about. And so I gained a ton of weight and drank a lot and hung out in my apartment and hated every second of LA. I thought it was so awful. And that went on for a year and a half. And then doing thing. I did this sketch comedy group that was terrible. And then I decided that I was going to learn how to improvise, and I knew about IO because I'd grown up near Chicago, so I knew what IO was, and there was an iOwest in LA, and so I went to sign up for a class, and at this time it was 2003 maybe, and you had to go in person and bring them a check, and
I remember checks.
Yeah, you had to bring them a check, and I went in and I was shaking. And I sat in my car for a long time. I wouldn't go in the building. And then eventually I talked myself into going in, and I went in and signed up for a class, and then gave him a check. And then I went back into my car and I just wept. I was so I was just so emotionally wrung out about trying to get improv back into my life, something that I had loved and not gone to grad school for and not touched for a year and a half because I was so depressed about LA. But joining iOwest, just like 180'd my whole life. And, I lost all that weight and I got a lot of friends. And then I thought LA was the best. If you have friends, it's all fine.
It is helpful.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I started doing classes there. My very first day in my level 1, the teacher, her name is Marion Oberly, and she is just a sheer delight of a woman. If she's listening, she's probably not because she has kids. But she was like, well, what do you want to do with improv? The thing we ask students in a level 1 class. Well, what brought you here? Why are you here today? What do you want to get out of this? And I just remember being like, I was like, I want to teach improv. I love it so much. I was just like a freak show about like how I wanted to teach it and how I was obsessed with it. And like, no one had done improv in this class, but I had done, at this point I had done like 6 years of improv before I joined this level 1 class, but it was a totally different experience, obviously. And yeah, so then I did classes there.
Was it a different style? Because you had been doing short form, and then were the Over the Rind guys doing still short form, or no? They were long form.
I mean, we did long form. We did long form and short form, but really we didn't know what we were doing. Like we didn't have any training. We're trying to do like a Laurent, which P.S. is the most boring form of all time, but like, I don't know that. Like, I don't know how boring it is, except that it's so boring and no shade to the Laurent. I think it's a great teaching tool, but I do think it's very tedious to watch. So anyways, they're doing long form and specifically the Herald at iOwest.
Right.
And so it was just like a whole other ball game. And that was so exciting. It was so exciting and fascinating to me. I was just so excited. And then, you're supposed to complete the program. And then after you're done with the program, you can audition to be on a house team. But after my level 1, my teacher, Marion Oberly, said that I could audition to be on a house team. And, here's my moment again where I get to go, audition with all these people who have done the whole program for a Herald, which I have, only seen now a handful of times because I just started classes. And I just didn't. I made it to the final callback. This is how ridiculous it is. I made it to the final callback, but I did not make any teams because truth trained, I didn't know anything about a Herald. And I could not complete, I couldn't complete 3 beats of an idea. Like, I didn't even know how to heighten anything. Like, I was just really going on, like, raw energy and supporting people. And it's ridiculous.
Now, question, when you went in and did this audition, were the people that had been there a long time upset about it, or was this a regular thing that like a random level 1 would get tossed in occasionally? Because that happens sometimes.
It does happen sometimes. It's not a regular thing. And to be frank, I do not remember anybody in that audition. I don't remember anything about it except that I was like a demon from hell. And that's really all I remember. I was so scared that I just, I had like blinders on. Like, I don't know. I have no idea what happened in that room.
Oh, man.
So I don't remember what people's reactions were. I think also truth trained to those people, they were probably just also obsessed with themselves. So they had no idea what was going on either.
Oh, yeah. Sure.
I'm just totally obsessed with, their performance and if they're going to get on a team and all that sort of stuff. So, yeah.
Yeah.
So, yep,
I just
that
wondered if you were going
me.
to get punched again.
I did not get punched.
Right.
There was no punching.
Right.
And I didn't actually make it onto a team until my last level in iOwest.
Probably best.
So I didn't do some sort of prolific, and then level 2, I went ahead and did it. No, level 2, I had Craig Kakowski as my teacher, which I'm I'm sure you or people are listening know who Craig Kukowski is.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know who Craig Kukowski is? Yeah?
Yes.
Yes. He was my teacher, and he had just moved to LA from Chicago. And I told him that my level 1 teacher had told me that I could audition. And he must have just thought I was the biggest dip cuss of all time. He was just like, he's like, well, you don't have permission from me. And I was like, what? I mean, I already auditioned whoever you are. And then for years, I was like, oh, Craig Kukowski, I don't know. I don't like that guy. And he's delightful, and I love him very much. And if you're listening to this, Craig, which he's probably not because he's probably busy doing great things, it was just, I just remember for years after that being like, Craig Kukowski, yeah, whatever. Because he told me I couldn't audition, and he was right to say that to me. That was a very stupid thing.
No. At what point did you start teaching there? Because I know that was your hopes and dreams. Did you get to teach there, or do they just let you perform?
I did. As I have expressed, I was desperate to teach, and then, but then like that dream also kind of like went on the back burner when I realized there was so much more to learn. And so I didn't actively pursue teaching. I started coaching in maybe 2007. And then my friends, they were from a team from Boston, I believe, because they met at UMass. Isn't UMass in Boston? Isn't that true?
That's correct. I mean, UMass is University of Massachusetts. So
and they're our age too. So they met and formed an improv team at UMass. I think they went to UMass, called Mission Improbable. And do you know Mission Improbable?
I've heard of it. Yeah. I mean, I don't know if other people have named their thing the same thing, but I've heard of that.
Well, they have a very successful college touring company that goes all over, and they also have contracts with the armed forces. Like they're nice. In everything. But they started at UMass, and then they did short form there, and then I met one of their members at IO. Named Lloyd Alquist, who has gone on to be Epic Lloyd of the epic rap battles of history.
Oh.
But he was my coach of a team that I was on called USS Rock and Roll, and he was just awesome. He was such a great coach, such a great mentor, and they got the opportunity, Mission Improbable got the opportunity to purchase a theater out from somebody else called the Westside Eclectic in Santa Monica. And so they took over, and then he was like, do you want to teach a class? So that was the first time I got to teach a class, was at their theater, which is called MI's Westside Comedy Theater. And that was in like 2008. I got to teach there because at the time, iOwest wasn't allowing people to teach that were not trained in Chicago. So you could train at iOwest, but you couldn't teach there. You had to train in Chicago, unless Sharna Halpern saw you and approved you. So, and I'd been coaching there for a few years at this point, and coaching their Herald teams or whatever. And USS was a very well-respected, a very heavy group work team. And we were together for like 8 years. And Sharna came to a festival that iOwest was having that we had every year. I can't remember what it was called. I can't remember what that festival was called. Anyways, she came, and then we were having this like competition that was like you were on a team with all the people that were from your state. So it was like like every state would face another state in this over the course of a week, and you're just kind of thrown together with people from your state. But my state was Indiana, and even though it seems like because Indiana sucks so bad that like we wouldn't have that many great people. But because of Absolunacy, there was a ton of people at iOwest that were also on Absolunacy. So there was all these great people there. She came to the finale of that show, and she saw me perform. And afterwards, the artistic director, he like spun Sharna around and was like, "Oh, hey, this is who I was telling you about. You just saw her." And she was like, "Oh, yeah, you were so good." And then she was like, "Why isn't she teaching here?" And he was like, "Oh, she can teach here, and if you want her to." And she was like, "Oh, yeah, of course." And then that was it, and that was able to teach there. But that took years and years.
So let's jump forward again. You mentioned that you and your current husband ran a theater together. What's up with that? Tell me about that.
Well, I started teaching at iOwest, and my husband was already teaching there because he knew Sharna and had trained in Chicago. And he wasn't my husband at the time. I can't remember when we got married. Something. Anyways, we got married in 2012. And
Me too.
before we got married, we were friends for a really long time. He was also on USS Rock and Roll, and he was on the Herald team that I originally was selected to be on, which is called The Jungle. Anyway, so he and I were both teaching independently, and we were doing our two-person, which is called Now with Levin. And
what's it called? You cut out.
It's called Now with Annie and Levin, like to be in the now, to be present.
Right.
So we started, we were both really fascinated with the idea of, teaching improv, not necessarily for stage benefit, but for just like personal growth. And we had taught enough classes around at MI's Westside Comedy Theater, and we were also teaching at AMDA, which is the American Music and Dance Academy. We were teaching their improv program, and then we were teaching at iOwest, and so we had a pretty big group of students over the years, and so we decided to teach these classes called New Earth Army, which is based on the movie Men Who Stare at Goats. Do you remember that movie?
I've seen the movie, yeah.
So in that movie, George Clooney is, he's a, what is he? He's a guy. Oh, so like in the late 70s, early 80s, the truth, the United States had like a military offshoot that was in response basically to the Star Wars movies. So the United States thought that the Russians were training their people to be able to do like kind of Jedi warfare, like mind control warfare, and this happened after Star Wars, and so it was like a thing in popular culture. So to counteract their perceived notion of what the Russians were doing, they decided to make their own program, which was called the New Earth Army. And this is a true story. It's not just based on the movie. There is a guy who developed the New Earth Army, and Jeff Bridges plays him in the movie. And then in the movie, they do a lot of drugs and they experiment. But the thing is that George Clooney is seen as like the guy who has all the potential to be the best of these like mind warfare people. And like, they're supposed to drop down out of airplanes and like into the like enemy zones where they have guns, and they radiate peace, and then the people are supposed to drop their guns, or then they exchange flowers and everything will be okay. So this was a thing that the U.S. was actually doing. And in the movie, George Clooney says, what's his face? Jeff Bridges opens the door and says, go in and dance. And there's all these sweaty guys just like dancing, and clearly they're super high and all of that stuff because they're experimenting with LSD and all these drugs to like free their minds. And he says, "Oh, I can't." And then he has this flash. Oh, and Jeff Bridges says, "It's not that you can't, it's that a long time ago someone told you couldn't and you believed it." And then he has this flashback to being in his room, and he's young and he's dancing, and then his dad comes by and he yells some things at him, some horrible things, which I won't repeat. And then he throws a pill at him, and the record scratches, and George Clooney doesn't ever dance again. But in that moment, he decides that he's going to let that story go, and he's going to embrace who he wants to be. And so then he goes and he dances, and he becomes the greatest warrior that New Earth Army has ever seen. So the class we had, and we did this for a lot of years, was called New Earth Army, and it was basically that idea, but for improvisers, if you can imagine what that class would look like. And it was like an 8-week class, and there was a lot of we did weird stuff. We did meditation. We would do these dance sessions where we're not going to tell you how long we're dancing for, but you're not going to stop dancing and you won't get a break for 20 minutes. And we're going to ask you to do things inside of the dance, you're going to have to emote now. Now I want you to dance sexy, and these are all just putting people up against themselves. And, we'd ask people what their greatest fear was on stage, and when do you think that started, and when in your life did that start? So kind of related to my duck story, this was a thing that we started doing for other people, and they would keep journals, and we'd give them mantras, and they would wear bracelets, and at the end we gave them flowers, and the classes became wildly popular. Can you imagine LA really liking it?
I like
people in LA like this. And it was all tailored curriculum. So we didn't have a curriculum. We would go in and do an assessment day where we would put them through a bunch of exercises and dances and meditations and whatever, and then we would come up with a curriculum based on helping them, get to a certain point with their whatever their goal was. If they just didn't want to feel stupid on stage, or didn't want to be the one to feel stupid, or they couldn't be vulnerable, or there's a slew of things, and it always broke down to the same sorts of things for people. So the classes became really popular. It's so popular that we were well, it makes more sense for us to, rent a theater space than to continue to rent classroom space. It was called the Now Improv Theater because we were Now Improv. So we opened that theater, and it was really successful. It was doing really well, but then, I got pregnant. And when I got pregnant, then it was just really, I was pregnant when we opened it. And then I got pregnant with a second baby 2 years later. And we couldn't run a theater and raise 2 children. It was just impossible. So we closed it down. But then that same week that we closed it, the guys from MI's Westside Comedy Theater called us and asked us if we wanted to be co-educational directors at their theater. So then we took that job instead, and we moved to be in Santa Monica.
Oh,
and help run their theater.
At the Mission Improbable Theater? Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
How long did you work there? And you worked together? Man, you must really like your husband.
I do. I love him.
That's great. That's
but he's also, we taught those classes together. We were teaching together a lot at that point, so we were kind of Annie and Levin were like a brand. You know what I mean? They were we were like a thing together. We still are a thing together, but so yeah, we did that. We did that together. And then we went to MI's Westside Comedy Theater, and we were the educational directors there for a little over 2 years. But then, guess what? I got pregnant again with the third baby.
And you guys were like, "Yes, we want 3 kids. Let's do it."
No, I did not want 3 kids. It was a surprise pregnancy. Surprise!
Aren't they all?
But we wanted to, we did have that baby, and he's great. Stanley is a great guy. But yeah, that third baby really it was really hard to do that. So we stayed there as long as we could. We stayed there through my pregnancy. I gave birth to him. We stayed there for another 8 months, and then at some point we were like, we have to do something different because this is like too intense. We're just like, we're there all the time. We're running the educational department. We're teaching. We're teaching teachers. We're teaching classes. We're doing shows. We're like trying to live the life of a young improviser. And when you have kids, it's really hard to do that. So we moved to Montana. And to Bozeman, Montana.
How'd you get to Montana? Is your husband from Montana?
He is.
Oh,
he is.
That makes
Well, he's from Virginia
sense.
and then from Montana. So his dad has a ranch out here, and we were coming here all the time to see his dad. And it just seemed like a nice place. And we had looked at moving to a bunch of smaller cities. We're like, well, we can, move to a smaller city and try to open up a theater or become a part of someone else's theater. And there's talks of moving to Portland because of Curious Comedy Theater and some other places. But in the end, it was like, well, let's just try it. So we came here, and there's a really small but awesome community of people that live here and that perform, and that we fell in with and started teaching and doing shows here. And then it seemed like, well, you know what, I bet we could open a theater here. And it won't be the big thing that we had been doing before, and we won't have hundreds of students, and but also that's okay because we have had all those experiences. So when we left LA, my husband had said to me, like, and we'd both been actors, and I'd had a pretty successful commercial acting career for a long time, and he was like, what else do we want to do here? Like, what else do you want to do that we haven't done? And I was like, I don't know. I don't know if there's anything else. I mean, like, I just love working at Westside Comedy Theater because I did. I loved working there so much. And he's like, yeah, but, like, is there anything else? Or is this the end? This is everything we've wanted to do in LA. And that was like a really hard pill to swallow, that like there wasn't anything else I needed to do there. And so being in a smaller community and like helping theater grow in a smaller community, it's just a whole other different thing, but it's not any less valid. You know what I mean? Like, you don't have to live in a big city to love improv or to get to know about improv or get to perform improv. Mm-hmm. And if we can help a theater, and we partnered with a girl, she's just a little girl. We partnered with a performer here named Molly Hannan, and she's been doing improv here for a few years. And she was super interested in the idea of opening a theater, and she's really great and has become a dear friend. And so we formed Last Best Comedy because the unofficial tagline of Montana is it's the last best place. And so now we're going to try to open up a theater. Well, we had a theater. It was supposed to open. Open on March 15th was the hard day that our lease took over. But then everything shuttered on March 6th. Yep. March 8th, I think, was when everything shuttered. So we were just a few days away from, like, our final, like, pen to paper first check of rent when everything shut down. So now we're just waiting, like everybody. We're just kind of waiting for it to possibly start up again, which, I know it will. You talk for a second. I've just been talking.
You're great.
Is this a wine?
No, you're fine. You're perfect. Thank you for telling me about this new community. Yeah, everybody's stopped. It's nice, though. I'm sure, you've kept in touch with the people in your community, though, right? Like during this time, are you doing like online stuff? Or are you just sort of doing like Zoom calls to do mental health checks with your pals?
We were doing, in the beginning, we did a thing called the Quarantine Comedy Hour, and we got people from all over to come and do, partially scripted kind of bits and interviews and, that kind of stuff. And we did that for a while, and we had people from our community be like cast members on that. But, like with a lot of things that have happened to everybody, it just became stale at some point. And then we tried to do some Zoom classes, and I did some Zoom teaching here, but then also for some other theaters. And I don't know, it just wasn't the thing. And then also here in the summer, it was so like lovely here, and Montana's like a big open space kind of place. So we started doing outdoor, socially distanced improv workouts, and then we did improv jams, all socially distanced. We were being very careful. Mm-hmm. But we got to be outside and together over the summer, which was really great. And now it's snowing, so we're not doing those things.
Yeah, it's real cold.
Now we're back to being in our houses.
Yeah. Man, that's the tough part about the whole snow thing. I mean, like the pandemic at the beginning during the latter half of the winter was kind of like this'll be over soon, right? But now that we're headed into like the second winter, I worry, there's just a lot of cold out there to be had. And
there's a lot of cold to be had. There's a lot, but you're in Texas. Like, I would give anything to be someplace warm like Texas. I don't know if I want to be in Texas per se, but I would go there. I would go there right now.
Well,
no shade to Texas.
It's okay. I mean, you gotta, it's a toss up. Different places, you get different things, right?
Right, exactly. I would go to Austin. That seems great. I would definitely go there.
Good weather.
100.
Yeah. Plus, Austin is a magical wonderland of a town, so it's lovely.
Yeah, it is lovely. I have been there. I was there in 2010 or 9, something like that, and it was great. What a great place it was.
What a great place it was.
What a great place it was.
Well, I'm glad that you have found yourself a good spot to do theater in Montana. I mean, I totally understand the need to kind of settle down and feel more rooted in a solid space to have kids, I mean, I definitely feel that way with my kiddo. I'm not out at improv theaters at night. I do daytime teaching now or online stuff. And it's I don't know how I would do it. He's just, he's with me all the time, right?
I know. It's really hard. And we did it for a while. We did the max. I mean, we were running a theater, then we ran somebody else's theater, and we were raising 3 kids. It's crazy. And, I don't know. It's been a real, it's been very challenging for me because I have been so in improv and in the community for so long. And then to be in Montana, which is totally remote, I'm not connected to anybody anymore. I mean, I kind of am, people still, call me or ask me to teach something or whatever. So I have some online access to the greater world community. And I'm so thankful to the internet for that I haven't lost all of my things, but also, you were talking at the very beginning before we started recording about well, what do you do with improv and how can you, if you love it, well, what do you do for your day job and all that sort of stuff. And my husband, Levin, and I were just at some point we were we don't know what else we would do at this point. Unless I'm going to go to school to do something totally different, mathematics, I have no idea what other career I would do because I love running theaters. I love a theater community. I love being on stage, and I love helping other people experience that thing. And so being in a smaller town, even though it doesn't have it definitely doesn't have the glory. There is no glory because it is a small town. But it does have the actual accessibility to be able to well, we could run a theater here. the demand is not going to be the same as if we were in LA or another big city. And this might be an actual place that we can get to live our dream of being a family with our children and get to live our dream of continuing to like run a theater and be performers and know that that's good enough. It doesn't have to be that it's, you know, we're not the next second city, but we are just us, and what we do will be good enough to fill that void. Because selfishly, the reason I wanted to open up an improv theater here is not because I thought it would be like super successful. It was mostly because I just want to be able to walk into an improv theater. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yes,
like the like sensation of like being in your theater, being in the place that you call home, whether if you run it or you're just a student there or you're just a performer there. It's not just like, you know, like you get to go home to a place that is like your people and this is your stage, and it just feels so comforting.
Yeah.
And I don't have that here, even though there are other theaters here. And was like, well, then we're going to make our own thing here. We're going to make our own Cheers. We're going to make our own improv Cheers here.
Improv Cheers.
Am I still breaking
great.
Up? Improv Cheers.
Yeah. I mean, like, that's a business model that I would, you know, contribute money into if I had any.
Yeah, just an improv Cheers.
Investors, call right away. So one final question for you. If you had to give advice to students just starting to get involved in improv or theater on their path, you know, and the ups and downs of it, you know, what kind of advice would you give them?
Oh, my goodness. That is such a broad question.
I could tell
what kind of
but
advice?
I feel like it's going to be better if it's broad.
It's just it's a real wide swath. What advice would I give people? I guess the advice I would give people is that, you know, that improv is the art of you. That, you know, artists have paintbrushes and actors have scripts, but improvisers just have themselves. And if you can really truly swallow that truth down in the beginning, you're going to be better off, because lots of people are going to want to tell you how to do it. And lots of people are going to tell you their philosophies and like, well, these are the ways that we heighten and this is the rules of improv. And then you're going to go to another theater and they're going to tell you their things. But really that all stems from one person saying, this is what worked for me, and so I'm going to make an improv curriculum. And it worked so well for me that I get a chance to make an improv curriculum. That's no shade to their curriculum or their thoughts, because they probably have very legitimate thoughts and you can probably learn a lot from them. But in the end, improvisation is about yourself, and it's about honing your own sensibilities and your own philosophy about what you think is fun and what you think is funny. And the best coach and the best teacher that you can ever have is actually yourself, because you know the places that you are hiding, you know the places that you are avoiding, the situations on stage you are like, I just don't do that. I just don't do group work. Oh, I just don't do fast tags. Oh, I don't do monologues. There's a reason you don't do those things. And it has to do with your personality and the way that you were raised and things that happen to you. And if you can continue to refine yourself and get better at being you in life, you will get better at being an improviser. And you can use the improv stage to improve your life, just as you can use your life to improve your improv. They're one and the same. So my advice is pay attention to you and not what other people want you to be or what they demand of you, but what you actually want to be. And how can you be the best version of you?
Yeah.
That's my advice.
Oh, man. It's like sitting here listening to sage advice from like Brene Brown or something. It's like solid. Oh, so good.
Was that solid advice? Is that good?
Yeah, I was soaking that up. I like didn't respond for a second. I was like, oh, I need to say something, because I was just like, Oh, man, I need to hear that. Like, oh, yes, I need to do it. Oh, such good stuff. Annie, it has been
my cheeks are
great.
so red from my cheeks are red from my wine. I just got up and looked in the mirror. I've got a really red face. And now I'm like, oh, my God, was I just, like, drunk while I've been talking?
No.
I don't think I am.
No, you've told me lovely stories about your journey, and you were not drunk at all.
No, I'm okay. I'm lightly tipsy. Amy, you don't know. I could be totally wasted right now.
Right, you totally could be. It's totally fine. I don't judge you. It's late at
Thank
night,
you.
and you made it, and you had a talk with me, and I appreciate that. And I think it will benefit people because it just benefited me.
Well, that's good. I felt like it was mostly just just me. Podcasts are so weird because it's like, oh, I know I'm coming on your show to be your guest, and you're going to ask me these questions about my life, and then I say them, but then at the end I'm like, man, I just talked about myself for so long, and that makes me feel bad as an improviser. Like, what a selfish time.
No, I think it's important to reflect.
Sure.
It's important to
Sure.
reflect.
Yeah.
I mean, great stories and a lovely arc, right? You're a great
lovely
guest.
arc.
Like it all came together.
Thanks.
You like storytelling even in your own life story. Solid.
Well, I wrote out my interview over and over and over again. So This is the most refined version.
Good.
That's a lie. I would never write anything down and then say it because I'm not the duck. I'm not the duck.
Oh my God. Well, hey,
It's okay.
I appreciate you being on the podcast and chatting.
Thank you so much for having me. What a time. You and I just meeting online and then me just saying yes to this podcast without knowing anything about it. And now I know you. And now after the pandemic, when I come to Austin, we can do a show together.
Yeah, that'd be great. Oh my God. Yes.
I like how you were like, let's be friends. And I was like, let's do improv together.
It's the same. It's the same thing.
It's the same thing.
Don't have friends that aren't theater people. And in fact,
Right,
the
right.
people who are my friends that aren't theater people are like so special.
They're so special. And you got to treat them so special, too, because they just can't hang.
They're just different. You know what I mean? They're like,
They're just different.
What are you guys doing? Bits? Oh.
So many times non-improv friends are like, oh, are your improv friends going to be there? Because I just don't know if I can do all the bits.
Thanks for listening to Yes But Why Podcast. Check out all our episodes on yesbutwhypodcast.com or check out all the content on our network, HC Universal, at hcuniversalnetwork.com.